Hi, this is Thomas from Apex Game Tools. In this video we'll be looking at how serialization works in Apex Utility AI. In this first video we'll be looking at the basics of serialization, how it works, and in the second video we'll be looking at some more advanced stuff on how you enable serialization of external types. Now, just to understand the need for serialization, it works the same as mono behaviors. When you configure a mono behavior, you will have some values on that mono behavior, some properties and fields that you can set, and those are then serialized to the scene. Similarly, in the Apex AI, you have the different objects that make up the AI. You have some selectors, some qualifiers, and some actions, and these will all expose properties and fields, and you will then set these to configure the AI. And once you save the AI, those fields will be serialized and saved with the AI. Now, in addition to the default components that are exposed through the AI, selectors, qualifiers, and actions, you can also define your own custom types that you want to assign to your different elements. In this video we'll be looking at doing so, writing a custom type, in addition to writing this example qualifier that we have selected right here. The custom type is what you see over here. So let's have a look at how that works. So in code, the first we have here is the qualifier. It's very simple, as you can see. Just has a single field that it exposes. It is of a custom type, and then it's called custom settings. And what makes this serialized is this attribute that it is decorated with, called Apex Serialization. This is what you need to decorate all fields and properties that you wish to serialize. So let's have a look at the custom type. So as mentioned, you can serialize anything as long as you decorate properties and fields. They will get serialized. Now, it only works for reference types at this point, since how value types work, you cannot create custom value types and have them serialized in this way. You can serialize them in another way, which would be covered in the second video. So let's have a look at this. So this is a pretty simple class. It has a few fields and a few properties. You can see it has a protected field, a public field, another public field, and a property. All of them are decorated by this Apex Serialization attribute, and that means that they are all serialized. Now if we switch back to the editor, you can see when you have custom types like this, you will get an option to choose the type on this little icon here, and you can obviously also remove the one attached. So if we go ahead and do that, it will return this to null, and then you can click this to select another type. Now currently there's only one type. The reason there's only one type is that we have actually bound this to a specific type. So if we look at our qualifier, it is actually bound to this type called custom type. So only that type or derivatives of custom type, of which there are currently none, will be appropriate for this setting, and so we will only have that one show up. Now we could change that. We could change this to an interface instead. I have created a small interface that does nothing, but we can then represent this type with that interface instead. So now the qualifier expects types of this interface rather than the specific type of custom type. And since I have also created another custom type up here that we'll get back to also later, I should now have a few more options. So when we get back and it has compiled, I will now have a few other options up here that I can select between. I could select another type, or I could select my custom type. Now, as you probably noticed, when we selected the other custom type, we had no fields to edit. This is because this type does not have any fields. So you can attach types that have no fields. I mean, you can have things like actions or things that actually provide some functionality that you want to attach to an object, but they expose no fields. You can easily serialize those as well. It's simply that in order to expose fields and show them in the editor, they will need to be decorated by the mentioned attributes. Now you can see this one has another attribute attached. It has an Apex serialized type attribute attached to it. And this is because it has no properties. Now this isn't necessary to attach this or decorate it with this, but it helps some of the tools in Apex Utility AI to find this type. So it is recommended that if you have a type like this that has no exposed properties or fields, you attach or decorate the class with this attribute. So let's have a look at the Apex Serialization attribute and all the other options that you have to control how fields are rendered in the editor. Now, as you can see already, some of these have a default value specified. If you do that, it will prevent this field from being serialized if the value of the field matches the default value. So this reduces the size of the serialized JSON, which it is as default, but the serialization will only happen if these are not the same, because when you create it again from the serialized version, it will get this value by default. Now, if you do use these, it is recommended that you do. It's obviously important that what you state here is actually the default value. So if I had done like this, then it wouldn't really work as expected, because then it wouldn't serialize true, in which case it wouldn't serialize anything basically, because it wouldn't serialize the correct thing. So always have the default value actually match what this field is set to by default. So that's the default value. Some fields cannot have a default value set, and some fields don't require it. For name fields or reference types in general, there's no need to set a default value because any null values will never be serialized. For other types like vector3s, since you can't actually set a constant value in the attribute, you cannot set a default value for it. Now the attribute has one more optional parameter that you can set. As you can see, it has something called hide in editor. So if you have a field that you would like to have serialized, but you don't want to show it in the editor, so you don't want it editable, but still want it serialized, then you can set this to true. Additionally, you have some options to control how the different fields are rendered in the editor. You can set a name. So let's say that I don't like this name. Name field doesn't really describe what it is. I would just like it to be name. I can then decorate it with a friendly name attribute and give it the name name. Of course, you could also simply have renamed the field, but if you do it like this, you don't have to refactor anything. It will retain its name in code, but in the editor it will be called this. The friendly name has a few additional options. You can attach a description, which will attach a tooltip to the field so that it describes what the field represents, and you can define a sort order so that in relation to other fields, how is this field sorted. The default will be 0, so if you want something to be before something else, you can set it to a negative value, or you can set it to a higher value to put it or push it further back. You can also choose to categorize different members if you want to. If you have a lot of members in a class, it might be easier to overview the different members if you categorize them into meaningful categories. So let's go ahead and do that. So for this one here, I'm going to put this into a member called details, and we're going to do the same for this one down here. Save that and let's go back into Unity and see how that works. It recompiles, and once it has recompiled, we can reselect it, and now we can see the name has changed, and we now have these sorted under a details category as expected. And lastly, in cases where you have fields that actually depend on other fields, we have the option to set a dependency attribute. And as you can probably see here, we have set it up for that. So now we have a details category, and we have something called show details up here. So these down here should rely on this one being true. We set that up by adding a member dependency. So it has the name of the field. It actually did. Now it does. It has the name of the field that it is dependent on. In this case, it is a Boolean, so it will have a Boolean value. There are some different options in here, so you can also depend on other types of fields, floats, integers, with different matchings or compare operators. So basically you can say it depends on something being greater than whatever, 5, 10, something. In this case though, oops, it is a Boolean, so we're just going to rely on it being true. Switching back into Unity, let it recompile. And then if we click this button, it's going to remove the details. I'm going to show them again. Now the category is going to remain there even though the fields underneath are hidden. This is something we may change in the future, but for now this is how it is. So that's it for the basics on serialization. In the next video we're going to be covering how you can serialize external members that are not under your control. So see you in the next video.